Hello everyone, welcome to us Wargamer. I'm your host Rob. Welcome to Street Day 118. It's a lovely Monday. It's a great day, and I'm joined by Tim. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you. Where are you calling us from? That's the real
I
question.
am on the top floor of my own gaming bar. I'm living the gamer dream. I somehow have ended up owning a bar in the middle of coronavirus. It's awkward.
Perfect. I mean, loads of opportunity to play yourself, I guess.
Yeah, like it's the sort of thing that where everyone's been talking about playing, back garden hammer or floor hammer or whatever kind of hammer they're looking to do. Like I've been able to come to here and do like whatever gaming tables I want. I've just not had anyone to play with because all the lockdowns and whatnot.
Okay.
It's been a wild, weird time.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna introduce Tim, who is a wonderful man, and he's got loads of relevant experience to talk to us about. Obviously, as you heard, he owns a gaming venue in London, so there's loads to discuss there. That's going to be what we're going to talk about today. Also, I'm going to be asking Tim, and Tim's going to be giving us knowledge of. He's done lots of streaming for Magic and other stuff as well, so he's got lots of experience to bring to the table for a discussion. But thank you to everyone who's joined us live. Dexamon, Team, and Cash Mimer, Angle, Dreadwoods. What up, babe? Budtastic Guy. Hello, the voice of the T Sports Network, Mr. Budtastic Guy in the chat. Hello,
the voice of the T Sports Network.
Yeah,
Love it.
In a world gone mad, what two men want to roll dice? Hey, Skinny Boots, and thank you to everyone else going on Patreon. Couldn't do this without you, and of course, thank you to everyone who listens to the podcast. Please stay hydrated. Drink that water. I know you guys. Oh, and also my YouTube brethren. We've got a real YouTube crowd going on now. Leave comments, you guys. Anyway, so Tim,
Yes.
just before we get into where you've come from and how you got to where you are, how are you? Well, you okay?
I'm doing great, yeah. So Boris has let the bars in the UK open again. We open again on July the 4th here. My place, I'm a terrible bar, and I haven't even said the name of it. Rule Zero over in East London. We are a gaming bar, and we got to open back up again on July the 4th, which was sweet. And we're having a good time. We're having fun. We've got people coming in appropriately distanced to have a few drinks, have some food, play some games. It's been good.
How's that experience been? How have you found it? Like, has it been awkward, easy?
It's been okay. Like, I think everyone that we've had come in at least gets it that, like, you know what? No one wants to ruin it for anyone. So, like, you don't get as many handshakes before and after games. People are a little bit distant. It tends to be people that have organised to come in to play with someone they know rather than just sort of, like, rocking up and seeing if they can get a game in with someone at random, which is all cool, We're very happy to make sure everything's cleaned and disinfected and all of that. And, like, it's not business as usual, but it's business. It's kind of working. It's all right.
Okay, that's good. And people are playing games, which is always fun to do.
Yeah, very much so. There's a lot of people that they're just like, oh my God, I've got a proper 8x4 now. Like, all right, fine, they've just changed the size of the tables for 40k, but I get to play on the right size table with terrain, and it feels like a bit of an event, which is kind of nice.
I think, yeah, like the tactile nature of Warhammer is always as soon as you start just rolling the dice, you're like, okay, I'm back in the zone. Like, I guess it's like getting on a pitch. I maybe equivocate it too. I'm not sure.
It's like TTS has, it's filled a few gaps for a lot of people, and it is lovely. But you spent all that time painting those figures over lockdown. You want someone to see them and be like, yeah, they look rad.
Yeah, you do. So, how did you like kick off into the hobby? Like, how did you get started? I know it's an age-old question, but everyone's got to do it.
With Warhammer and Games Workshop, I started on. Let's think. I started with Hero Quest. That gives you an idea. And Hero Quest into Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Into like my first edition of Warhammer would have been when the first big box came out, the Goblins and High Elves. Whenever that was in the 90s. Played a bunch of that, played a fair amount of 40k, bit of Man of War, bit of Epic. Which other ones did I cover? I reckon at some point I played tons of Necromunda. Like, I think at some point I played most of, like, I would say until sort of the mid to late 90s, I was all about it. That was everything I did. Took a little break, ended up playing a bunch of Magic the Gathering, working on that, and then fell back into it a couple of years ago when I got a game store, and all of a sudden you can't really ignore it once you've got people coming in asking about things. The easiest way of being able to do all that is to play, and thankfully we've got a really lovely player base, especially for Age of Sigmar in the store. got in with them, and my Gits army's all. I played that at Bobo last year, and I'm working on my Slaves to Darkness at the moment.
Okay, all right. So
It's been fun.
A long history of getting into it, and also like very interesting that it was owning a gaming store that like not brought you back, but like pushed like getting it, because you can always be in it a bit, but there's being in it a bit, and then there's being in it seriously, right?
Yeah, it's not as if I was completely unaware of what was going on in my sort of dry spell for Warhammer. But the big difference for me was that once I had a store, and this, you don't need to own a store for this. You just need to have a store that you can go into and have a nice time hanging out at. That's when, rather than relying on like one mate, two mates that play to be able to get games in, you can all of a sudden build your army and get a bit more out of it, because you can play against loads of people with all sorts of different sorts of armies, whether or not you're talking about tournaments or just like, rather than it just being my mate John who's got a filthy high elves army or whatever, like all of a sudden you're like, okay, right, Donal's got his whichever armies he's got, Adam's got his dragon. You all of a sudden, like when the base of people you can play against expands, the whole hobby just comes to life for me.
Yeah, I think that's also true for me as well. Like once you, especially because it's such a complicated hobby, and like later on tonight on the show we're doing all the GHB 2020 changes, and I've been collating all that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. But like we've been collating all the information. I've been collating all the information over the past couple of days, and it's just amazing what little stones people are like. Oh, by the way, did you see this? And it's like, well, actually, that's like some of it's a nothing burger. Like interestingly, of all the things, points are the most. They're like, we could touch your points, but it's not really a thing. Anyway,
they've gone up, they've gone down. The game's still the game.
Well, it's almost identical. Wise. Yeah, pretty much. But we'll do that later tonight. But when you left, or not left to play, but you started getting seriously into Magic. Can you tell me about that journey? Because actually, eventually, that brought us two together.
So basically, I'd heard about it very, very early on when it first came out in 94, 93, 94, and I've always liked, like, amongst other things, I am a magician. Like, I do, like, performance magic and so on. And so anything with that name that involves a pack of cards, I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then, for me, the thing that I liked about it was that it's, like, very portable, very quick to sort of get into and get up and going with. And, like, I always loved building armies in Warhammer. Like, the build phase, for me, is huge. I love it. I love all the, like, interesting, intricate combinations of how things work to produce something bigger than the sum of the parts. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that in Magic. There's a lot to think about because there's just scads of cards. It's very, very easy for them to print tons and tons of cards. So I got into it for those sorts of reasons, quite casually, and then gradually, by some combination of luck and judgment, I ended up doing lots of event coverage for them. Lots of event coverage for their like Pro Tour level, high level events. So you got people playing for, $50,000, $100,000 for one tournament, and they've got their own whole, like initially it was text coverage that I did. So like just literally writing up games, like your old White Dwarf battle reports almost. And then gradually that moved into video as the world changed, and I had to change a bit with it. So yeah, I started doing video broadcasting. I mean, in total, I've done 15 years or so of Magic coverage and bits of coverage of other games. And ultimately, yeah, how we met was that we had an Age of Sigmar tournament in the store that we knew we wanted to stream. And like, while I know how to talk about games, at that point, the extent to which I knew AOS was medium at best. And we're like, it obviously makes sense to get you in. So we did a little broadcast, the two of us, which was awesome fun. Like
great fun.
Really like. I mean, it's the sort of thing. I know we're going to talk about it later, but I'm so excited about what's going to be happening. This year, next year with Warhammer coverage, because I want to talk about Warhammer. I want to do some streams. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it is really fun. And it was also a delight to work with you because you were a consummate professional, but also cool under pressure, which is actually an underrated skill in the streaming world.
I think loads of people, it's really easy if you're good at a game to assume that you're good at talking about a game. And lots of people that are good at games genuinely are good at talking about games. Like I've loved listening to Darren on the podcast talking about it. I've loved listening to all sorts of people talking about the game on the podcast. But like communicating a game to people that they're watching, it has got a few extra little foibles to it. And some of it, like there's not going to be any dead air on this podcast. Between the two of us, we're just going to constantly be talking because that's one of the skills that you end up generating is just being able to constantly talk utter nonsense that's hopefully at least broadly adjacent to what people want to hear about.
Yeah, I always. When I was younger, I read a book on Bushido, and one of the things, and I've always loved Japanese culture, and one of the things that they talk about is grace, and they talk about like practicing a thing over and over until you become better and better at it, but also so you can become more and more efficient, and so it's just like it's grace is effectively like the sum of its parts condensed down into like that perfect efficient kind of like delivery of the thing, which is I feel the exact opposite of what someone who's casting a game is doing. Yeah, they're basically like, I could tell you X, but let me take you on a journey of how we get to
X. It's entertainment, isn't it? So like to some extent, if all you're doing is okay, well these Hearthguard, they've got a movement of 4, so their natural move's 4, and then they're going to roll a dice to see how far they run. So actually, they're going to be moving a total of, they're moving 9 inches. All right, well, they've moved 9 inches, and here's where they've moved. Like, it's boring. No one likes it. It's not going to help anybody. Like, specifically for talking about games, getting a little bit of the narrative in as well. Not in terms of, this is the backstory of Gotrek, but more like this is why this makes sense in the overall story of the game. Like, there's a lot that you can do to kind of help bring everyone up to speed. And when it happens, it's lovely. And it's a real, like, everyone enjoys it. Like, in my experience, the really, really good players that know it all already don't mind hearing it again. And for someone like me, especially when I was learning the game, being able to be, talk about a game of AOS and go like, all right, I'm sure that there's a ton of players, probably not anyone that's watching this, because I think that generally honest Wargamer people, you get it. You guys know better than average, I would say. But like, I'm sure that there's tons of people every single time they win the role for priority, they take it. And like, I think that's a really natural thing if you've not worked through high-level AOS to assume that taking it is always correct. And it's not. We know it's not. Like sometimes, like, giving to them and working for the double later is just way stronger. And like anything like that you can communicate explicitly and have people feel like they're coming up to a new level by learning it. It's just like every sport is better when you understand it, and T-sports are no different. And like good broadcasting does exactly that.
Yes, I hope so, and maybe one day we'll actually get there. That's the key. Work towards that. So, but like, I want to ask you about your broadcast history. Like, so, like, how did going through that process? Like, how did you find that? Like initially, like, was it like looking back on it now? Can you talk us through those early days and where it went?
Oh, like it's constantly, even now, it's like the bit that people see versus all of the other things that are going on is, it's the duck above water and their legs are moving like crazy underneath. Because it's like, there's always like, it's not obvious when you're watching, hopefully it's not obvious when you're watching a stream that you've got like all sorts of bits of information flying at you, either visually or in your earpiece or whatever it might be, that you like shouldn't really react to, but inevitably sometimes you do. You've got, producers saying, all right, we need to cut to an ad break. We're going to be this long. Even just little logistics of getting people seated and your timings and all that sort of stuff. There's loads of things going on external to the game. And then also you're trying to make sure it's an entertaining broadcast for people. So like having chemistry with the people you're working with, having like, if you're doing international events and you've got live interviews, it's like, are people's languages good? There's all sorts of like weird little moving parts that have nothing to do with understanding the game itself that you're kind of trying to juggle at the same time. But then also, like with the best will in the world, you've got like, I don't know about your background, Rob, but for me certainly, like aside from the amount of broadcast training in the classic sense that I've had is I've done a bunch of stand-up. I've had a couple of bits of broadcast training, but by and large, you're kind of winging it. And you learn by getting stuff wrong, and hopefully you learn by getting stuff wrong in a way that doesn't show too badly on stream. But like, guys, when you're watching like Honest Wargamer streams, Magic streams, anything, and stuff goes wrong, it's just like, this is making us better for later. Sorry you had to live through it in the present moment. Like, it just happens.
That's true. No background training for me. My only real background training is working in nightclubs and flyering. If you've ever had anyone fly at you, which is just really street performance in another term. Also, working at nightclubs you've got this amazing skill as a nightclub promoter, where what you want to do is talk to a large group of people, but you want to speak to all of them for about 4.5 seconds each, and that's it. Yeah, so it's just a lot of like exits. It's just like, you look great, can't wait for you to fuck off, and then you just run to the next person. That's not really a skill, not one that I want to keep anyway, or is good for me.
Well,
Also,
it's interesting that you say that, because like one of the skills I think for making a good broadcast is like recognizing that you've got lots of different types of people watching and trying to give everyone something. So like there'll be some people that absolutely want to hear the backstory of Gotrek while he's in the process of doing his move across the board to inevitably delete something, and there'll be other people that want to know what the rules are for him because they haven't actually played against him, so they don't know the details of quite how crazy he can be on the table. And then you'll have other people that want to know like the strategic element of why he's choosing to get to that unit, and other people that just are like, why are we talking about him? There's Saurus Knights on the table. Like, you've got so many different sets of people that you're trying to give something. Sometimes, yes, someone will miss out, but ideally you're kind of like, you're juggling all of these different stories that you're trying to tell at the same time, which is a fun little challenge.
No, it's fun. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. Like, I wouldn't do it if I didn't love doing it.
God, yeah.
Because it's definitely not for the money. But it's but it's great fun. It's great fun. And like Scrivo, big shout out to Scrivo in the chat, who says it's those people who work in the background doing the button pushing or the camera movement,
earning every penny.
They are. That's the problem with arseholes like us in the front of a camera, because really we're sat on the shoulders of giants who are doing all the actual work. So big love to Scrivo in the
honestly,
chat.
it's one of those things where it's like, how good or not you look on camera is probably like, I mean, obviously you can mess up. Of course you can. You can make yourself look bad, but so much of how good or bad the stream that you're watching will appear to be is down to all of the preparation beforehand, all of the stuff that's going on in the background, and a bunch of stuff that hopefully no one ever needs to get a glimpse behind the curtain, because quite frankly, it's a mess back there.
It's true. It's true.
There's a lot going on, and there's some people working really hard that are doing.
And if it's got Scrivo in it, it looks worse than you could possibly imagine. That's generally my thoughts. Also, Dave Fraser says, best commentators in the world is cricket. I'd be amazed if they talk about the game for 50% of what they say.
Lovely red bus. Like, genuinely, like, there are some sports that are worth watching to get better at commentary. And cricket, baseball, like, it's easy to commentate on basketball because there's always something happening. It's much harder to commentate on cricket, on baseball, on Warhammer, on Magic, because you have these moments where literally it looks like you're looking at a picture rather than a moving image, because literally nothing's happening at that moment. Someone's thinking. And it's good that they're thinking because they have to make a good choice. It's terrible TV unless you've got someone that can fill that void, hopefully with some combination of, well, what are they thinking about, and some combination of whatever makes the world happy. Like,
yes. Also,
if we can have a little chat about nonsense, great.
Yeah, also insert all American sports, agreed, apart from maybe basketball. And then also insert definitely F1, definitely golf.
Oh, yeah.
Golf! Can we talk about everyone's like, oh yeah, people will watch Warhammer games. I'm like, they watch fucking golf.
I tell you what, if we're talking about people in the background that do an incredible job to make broadcasts great, how do those cameramen do it in golf? They catch a ball mid-air and show it the whole way down.
That is
Nonsense.
incredible.
I have no idea how they do that. Like, the robots are taking over. That's my only possible explanation, because... But, like, even with golf, so, like, even if you take golf, if you take F1, if you take baseball, if you take cricket, all of these are sports that could be described as being boring, right? Mm-hmm. But all of them, and I believe this is true of every T-sport, every E-sport, every sport, the better that you understand it and the better that you can, as a broadcaster, the better you can communicate what's going on. Once people get what's going on, it becomes much more exciting. So like baseball, it's a study of pressure between the pitcher and the guy at bat. It's not like he's trying to get people out on any one pitch. He's trying to con them into swinging at the wrong thing so he can get them out. And the guy at bat is trying not to get conned and hit that ball as best he can. And like, once you start viewing stuff through that lens, it gets more interesting, and suddenly you're paying more attention, and suddenly you're getting more out of it. And like, the exact same thing's true of Warhammer. If all you're doing is saying, well, they're going to roll this many dice, let's see how many sixes they get, that gets pretty boring pretty quickly. But if you can contextualize that in, all right, have we got a unit that's been put a little bit out of position here in order to draw something out of position, and it's a long form rope-a-dope? Have we got someone playing for the double? Have we got people having to act outside their normal experience base because there's a weird deployment or a weird scenario going on? That's where it gets interesting, for me at least. And like, the more that you get more out of anything, the more you put into it, and the more you can understand what you're watching, the more you'll enjoy it. And like, especially with what's going to be going on with T Sports soon, where we can go, right, we've got all of our battle plans ready a few days before, we've had a chance to speak to the players beforehand. Being able to get that little look into the back of their heads and talk about it will mean that the games themselves, inevitably, ignoring the fact that the players will be good, like, inevitably those games are going to be electric. It's going to be great.
Yeah, well, hopefully, let's fingers crossed. That's the aim. And if we don't do it on the first day, we'll do it on the second day. What up, DeBolt? Thanks for subscribing. Thanks very much for 31 months. What a gangster.
Yes.
Yeah, and also it's interesting watching sports change, like we've seen with cricket, and we've seen that change to make it more watchable and enjoyable for an audience over sticking to how it rigidly performs, right? For example.
Yeah, like 2020 is designed to be a fast-paced game so that people can have it be more accessible to them. Like, even looking at, like, I'm not going to try and gazump all your talk about the General's Handbook, but like, even the tiny change of just going, we're going to make it so you only get one damage prevention roll. Like, it just makes the game that little bit faster. Mm-hmm. It means that rather than spending more time on that one set of will these guys die or not, you get that out of the way, you move on to the next thing, and you get to cover more different bits of gameplay. So like, little changes like that have quite big knock-on effects, both for, how quickly you get to play your game in your club, but also how entertaining it will be for other people that are watching, or like, whether they're watching on a broadcast or just wandering by, looking at a game and seeing what's going on. Like, any of those little changes to smooth things out end up having a pretty big effect.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's loads to be said. I mean, people have for years been able to turn the most boring thing into the most watchable thing. I mean, there's marble racing. I mean, that's actually quite exciting.
That stuff's great
on YouTube. I mean, that's just great.
But that's only great because of everything that's going on around it. Like, obviously, you could watch it with the sound off, and you'd still pick a color you like, and you might cheer for it. But the bit where it gets interesting is once you start throwing in the commentary that's going on and creating backstories and creating a sense of narrative, not our, like, where did Gotrek come from, but like narrative amongst the players. That's the bit where it's like, oh yeah, I'm in now.
Yeah, I agree with you. How did you find like the Magic commentating, and then like, did you do anything to ever, like, did you watch other stuff to try and improve? Like,
I watched loads of stuff. Yeah, I watched other people commentating Magic, of course. Like, there's various things that are specific to any given game that mean that you can do a better or worse job in terms of talking about it. But no, I watched loads of sports commentary, especially like some of the stuff that we've been talking about, the slower games, because like a game of Magic, for those that haven't sort of played it a whole lot, like a high level game that's being played at tournament sort of thing will take a little bit less than an hour. So like, within that, there'll be some dead time where people are shuffling packs of cards. There'll be some dead time while people are thinking about stuff. But it's about an hour to fill. And like, watching sports that are a little bit more slow paced, super duper helpful for getting a feel for the cadence of how you talk about them. Like, do you try and fill all of that dead time with second guessing what people are thinking about? Like, you can try, but chances are the people commentating don't know as much about what's going on as the people playing. Not because, we're not smart people, but because we're having to jump between a million different decks or armies, a million different things to think about, and trying to make a good broadcast where they have one thing to think about, which is, how do I play these specific cards as well as I possibly can? So like, you can almost do yourself a disservice by trying to think too many moves ahead, even if you are very, very good. So some of it then comes down to, all right, well, what do we fill that time with? Do we fill it with talking about nonsense? Do we try and give backstory on players? Do we do it with any amount of nonsense banter? And the answer is, yeah, probably a bit of all of those things. And like, yeah, you gradually, like, I found that cricket, as mentioned in the chat, a brilliant one to listen to, especially radio cricket. Like, something that I think, like, I listen to the podcast. I typically don't watch on Switch. And I know that even with gameplay stuff, there will be some people that go, you know what? I'm going to put on the stream in the background while I'm painting. I'm going to put it on the background while I'm doing other things. And so for a lot of people that are enjoying T-Sports broadcasting, it's kind of radio, almost more than it is TV. Like, it's a sad thing to say when you spend thousands on cameras and trying to get beautiful shots and like trying to make things as visually arresting as you can. But it is the truth that there'll be a lot of people that effectively just listen to it. And that in itself colours a little bit of what you do. So like if you ever listen to cricket on the radio, they've got this crazy task of them of trying to communicate where the ball's been hit. Like you know, it's a three-dimensional space and you're trying to give an indication of, you know, is there a problem with coverage in a particular area that the batsman might exploit? Are they moving things around a little bit based on what hand the bowler's using, what hand the batsman's using? And it's like all of that stuff they're folding in alongside these massive swathes of effectively dead space where they point out that, you know, a lovely red bus has just driven by. That's the classic line for me for cricket always. And like, if you can like fold in to a relatively static game like Magic or like Warhammer, enough information about the visual shape of the game so that for the people that are listening along at home, it ends up being a pretty big deal. Like, I know that I like it. I mean, the other thing is that for something like Warhammer, like I've thought about it a little bit. I'm sure you've thought about it a ton. Like with the best win in the world and the most beautiful, incredible cameras that you can find, sometimes a top-down view, it's just difficult to tell which Fire Slayer that is because they've all got red hair from the top down and they don't look that different.
It's true. It's true. I'm actually very excited about the changes to board size. Like I'm almost certain the agency my board size will change in accordance with.
It seems
with
likely,
4K.
yeah.
Yeah, and it just makes it a little bit more. I mean, obviously, thanks to the community, we were able to get some fancier cameras the other year, so that was amazing. And thank you to all you guys. So we were able to get like some more, but you know, we've talked about this off air a little bit. Obviously, in order to, you can increase how many shots you can get and how much you can move things around if you just have more and more money and more people working. But that's not the case at the minute, and we have to kind of proof of concept it, and eventually we'll get there.
Well, I've got a sneaky idea that I'm going to share with you after the show for something specifically for that we were playing about with before COVID, and like if it ends up making the streams better, I'll happily share it with you. But yeah, we've got a cool idea that we think might do a good job for helping make it so you can just immediately look at a board and be like, all right, that's this Ghoul King on Terrorgeist with this artifact. This is a different Ghoul King on Terrorgeist, and we know which artifact's which just from the top-down view. So like, yeah, we've got a few ideas on that might end up helping just the whole of T-Sports, or the whole of Warhammer streaming at least, make it a little bit more visually. I mean, like even something like the objective markers. Guys, buy the objective markers, they're brilliant, do it. No, the objective markers for people being able to visually look at the game and understand what's going on, game changer, huge. Like, I can understand that there might be some players that were really good that didn't want them because they were like, I already knew and I felt like my opponents were playing worse for not recognizing when they're in range. But for people watching the game, spectacular, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, they're helpful. They're helpful, and I mean, there's some really good advances being done. There's some guys called the Rightful Ruler guys. They have like an AR app, which is kind of interesting in its integration. And there's so much stuff as well. Like we were lucky enough to work with for CanCon and some other stuff. We were lucky to work for Down Under Pairings and those other guys and do some stat stuff. But just really boring things for the viewers to know that exists. You know, they just want to see the thing. I will actually like to come back to the point you made about. I'd like to come back to the thing that you talked about, cadence of a game. And that's actually a really interesting thing, considering that I obviously stream 40k and I stream Age of Sigmar, because the difference is really...
huge difference.
Really, really, really different. Because most of 40k is that first turn.
Yeah, like if you drew an excitement graph for 40k, I'm losing track of which way around I went, but it'd be like turn 1, excitement right up here, huge amount of potential for everything to murder everything. And to be honest, it drops for the entire game because essentially whichever army is performing better, probably a large proportion of the time, in at least the 40k I've played recently, apologies if I'm way off base here, but yeah, like once key units start getting taken off the table, like, you kind of know where it's going after, like if by the end of turn 2, you ran a poll of who's gonna win this game in any chat anywhere, I believe that most of the time they would get it almost bang on every time. And like when it comes to AOS, like because of the nature of the turn structure and also how good the scenarios are, how good the different battle plans are, in terms of it's very, very important to be scoring points, that like you can't just look at a game for the first turn or two and like ignoring weird bad matchups. You can't know who's going to win for sure by the end of turn 2 unless someone's getting completely steamrolled. And you do get those last moment turnarounds. And to me, that's drama. That makes things super exciting. And like figuring out the right way of talking about AOS compared to the right way of talking about 40k, in spite of the fact that a lot of the rules are very similar, a lot of the dice rolling similar, like they are very different from a narrative standpoint, a gameplay narrative standpoint.
Yeah, and also from a tempo perspective as well. Like we talked a lot. We did some coverage at the beginning of the year, and we did like 2 events kind of back to back 40k and Age of Sigmar, and we had like a really good conversation as a team, and we were just like, actually, the cadence it's a lot more about the presupposition very quickly before the first turn than it is in Age of Sigmar. However, that's what's ultimately, in my opinion, very exciting because for about new 9th edition 40k, because of the scoring and the way that you can't score in the first turn and the way that you move. What I'm hoping for as well is because you oftentimes want that game where it's down to that final wire move at the end, because that's exciting for people to watch. That's always really, really good. But I also think it makes a better game. Like you feel more engaged as a player.
There's nothing worse than the feeling of I lost the game on turn 2, but I've still got another hour and a half of play to go. Like, no one's having a good time in that time, and like, it's a difficult one to metaphor. And I hope that 9th edition helps fix that, because like, it's got the tools to. Like, it's not impossible for 40k to end up swinging a little bit back from where it was of first turn is everything. And like, you know, AOS has had moments like that too. Like 1-drop lists have been a thing, and I like how they're making it so it's a little bit harder to get super low drop armies now. Like you had to properly work for it most of the time, and like that will ultimately be a good thing, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just a really, but what's also fun about Age of Sigmar, especially at the moment, well, is there's also some battle plans which change that tempo as well. So what I like is that variety. I think is the fact that you actually can turn up to a game, and sometimes the way an armies play, that's also it's such a fun, consistent, different set of environments that you get to explore, and I think as a game and as something to watch, it's got so much to offer. And I don't know if you felt the same as. Do you feel that Magic was the same? Because that's your most relevant experience, or do you like what if you could compare them, if at all? What do you think?
So, like, I would say that Magic has it's ebbed and flowed a lot over the years, and by and large, I would say that people, like, especially now, like, essentially Magic started around the time that the internet was first beginning to do its thing. And honestly, I think that the internet was huge in Magic getting big, dissemination of information and so on. But basically now you've hit a point with Magic where you can play it online very easily, you can play it offline very easily, but the preponderance of information and the level of like the number of matches played online, like you can sit there in your pants online and play a ton of matches very, very quickly if you really want to. And that means that people iterate towards the like best possible lists very quickly. And what that has ended up meaning is that you can end up with quite stale feeling formats and game states a little bit more quickly than maybe was true in the year 2000, like, because you've got a lot more people playing, you've got a lot more information being shared, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It puts a little bit more pressure on the game designers to come up with new, interesting stuff, but it does mean that like you can have more predictable matchups, I would say. And like one of the things that I quite like about where Warhammer's at, be it 40k or Age of Sigmar, is that even though like weirdly, like we were talking about Tabletop Simulator, and there's the TTS metagame, right?
Yeah.
Which is you can build any army you want, it's just a matter of making the clicks, and you can get games in without having to go anywhere, without having to do anything. So it's a little bit faster because of that, like in terms of information spread. But like real Warhammer, you know, with the figures, because you have to paint things up, because you have to buy the figures, like there's quite a lot of investment before people get to even play a game. Mm-hmm. And that means that like you get this natural bent towards building more fair armies, I want to say. Like obviously sooner or later, like there's been a lot of people in lockdown painting salamanders that like I don't know how quickly they would have got there if they were just having to look people in the eye and sit down at a real table with them and play. Like I think that in some respects Warhammer ends up being a lot fairer because there's that time lag in having to build anything. And then when you throw in battle plans as well, there's a lot more room for, like in Magic, the randomness is you've got a shuffled pack of cards. And like that means that sometimes you'll draw the cards in an order that's not going to help you very much. And that means that in principle, you can have a great player that will sometimes lose to a player that is worse at the game. And that's not me trying to be mean, but there are some players that are better than others. And sometimes bad players will win because they've got lucky on how their cards have come out. In Warhammer, you get players that can in principle win based on dice rolls. But in practice, we know that you can build an army such that you've got lots of rerolls, you've got lots of ability to mitigate against bad dice. And then on top of that, none of that's really going to impact the movement phase in a big way, and movement is colossal. So like, I like the fact that you've got battle plans as an extra errant factor in how matchups go, so that it's not a foregone conclusion that, like, let's imagine, like, if we put together a matchup that we feel is going to be pretty lopsided, doesn't really, like, let's say that I'm playing a teched-out, techless Lumineth force that's throwing around lots and lots of mortal wounds, and that you're playing an army that has lots of support characters and is going to be struggling a little bit against that bomb. But then it happens to be that there's a specific battle plan that is being played, and maybe, you know, if it's a tournament that's got its own comp going on, additional potential rules that change the board a little bit, or, you know, it's one of the T-Sports Network matches where we've got bans going on that suddenly, like, there are all sorts of things that change the game state enough that you have to think on your feet a bit. It's not going to be, all right, we've played this matchup before, we know how this matchup goes, barring dice rolls, we pretty much know what's going to happen. Like, I love the extra little elements, like even something like terrain dice. If it works out that somehow or other one side of the board's all arcane and the other side's all entangling, you're going to have a different game for that. And like, yes, it means that keeping track of the stats from like the stats show side of things gets a little bit messy, but it also means that people are having good games. And quite frankly, I'd rather more people have good games than that we have a really clean, easy stats.
Yeah, well, I've said this time and again, but there is just like holding the entire game in your head is impossible. Like, I mean, even the greatest gamers, I would poke at them if they said that they can hold the whole thing in their head. It's not true. But what's fun about ACMR 40k, or I think Wargaming generally, or at least, you know, the two ones that I talk about the most, is that it's those almost infinite amount of permutations which creates such an exciting story. There are just so many things. Like, you've got the army in a null space. Well, already they could be so different to each other and to what they could have been just inside those factions. Then you've got the battle plan and or mission. Then you've got the fact that they're playing each other. You've got how the terrain functions and works, what's going on there. And then you've got the dice rolls and all that mix up. And it's such a, like, it's so many options. Like, it's just...
Well, it's funny. Like, I feel like you touched on there. I've got a little list that I have just, like, written. It's literally, it's in my Wargaming bag of the ways that I lose a game. And like, obviously, you know, bad dice happen, etc. But like, I think it's worth everyone examining their own game and figuring out what stuff they know they do wrong. And then I think by and large, most of us do know why we're losing games. And like, so for me, it's, I get greedy and start doing cool things rather than impactful things, because I'm excited about doing cool stuff. And there's like a few other bits and pieces. Like there was one that you mentioned there that triggered me, and I've immediately forgotten which one it was. But like, oh, that's right, yeah. So thinking about matchups, and like, it's really dangerous to go, all right, I'm playing, let's imagine that I was playing Slaanesh 6 months ago, like, and you go, okay, I should win this matchup because it's let's say it's a 65%er for me, which is about, that's the fair bit of how good Slaanesh were at the time. And you go like, if you walk into it just going, well, I'm going to win because I'm going to win, that's not very helpful at all. Like, that's you setting yourself up to not pay attention. Like, whereas if you're just like, okay, I'm going to win this matchup because I know that I can earn depravity here, I've got better movement here, and I can get on objectives and just sort of quietly kill things. Like, that's a more useful game plan. Obviously, you'd want a proper full game plan. We know this, but like, yeah, the stats show, like, I think it's useful for going into a tournament and tempering your expectations, but for like individual games, ignore those percentages entirely and just try and win the game. Like, it's really easy to sort of forget about the fact that there are all of these other errant factors that can impact whether or not you win or lose, and focus on something that's not even going to help you. And that's where the wheels come off, at least for me. I can't speak for anyone else.
Yeah, I agree with it. So let's pivot a bit, and let's talk about your venue. Yeah. Like, so what was the intent or the desire behind setting up a venue in London?
Well, I mean, part of it, I'm a gamer. I've always been a gamer to some extent, and in some respects, it's, you build the place that you want to go. So our place, Rule Zero. The meaning of Rule Zero, for those that don't know, is it's, depending on how polite you want to be, the version that we use is either Rule Zero is don't be a dick, or, the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure version, which is just be excellent to one another. So, like, the rule before you even start with any other rules is, if we both understand this, we'll have a good time. And our space, like, there's loads of opportunities. Like, everyone right now is looking at a screen, or I guess listening to a podcast. Like, screens are great. We love technology, but we don't have any screens up anywhere in the bar. We've got a bunch of gaming space. We've got a bar. We've got a kitchen. We've got lovely seating. And the idea is that this is the place that you come to enjoy the time with the people you're with, play some games if you want, eat and drink if you want, but generally just get an opportunity to chill out. Almost treat it like, how you go to a sports pub, if you're into sports,
yeah,
you can show up. You don't need to know anyone that's there, but you know that everyone's got a similar view of the world, and you can probably have a good time and chat to some people.
Or wear any clothes on your top half. That's the traditional sports club thing.
Sure. But yeah, like, anywhere that you go that's got a theme or a sort of a rationale behind it, like, in principle, that you don't have to organize with a big group of friends to be there. You can just rock up, and even if you don't know anyone, hopefully you can have a good time. We recognize that, like, for gamers, for good or for ill, they might not feel comfortable in a sports pub, or even just, a regular pub, club, whatever it might be. But that doesn't mean to say they're not sociable. It's just that they don't feel comfortable in that space. And we were like, well, let's make a space that is comfortable for gamers, but equally is a nice, fun space, to eat, drink, be merry for everyone. Because in part, I've been to lots of game shops over the years. I love game shops. Some of them are more outwardly welcoming than others. And this is not a knock on anywhere in particular. It's not a knock on anything beyond. There will be some people that walk into a game shop, they see, the Warhammer armies that are out, they see Ticket to Ride and various board games, they see people playing Pokemon or Magic or whatever, and for them in that exact moment, they're like, this isn't for me, and they walk right back out again. They just get a bit spooked, happens to all of us in all sorts of situations. And we're like, that can create quite an artificial divide, I think, where people go, like, I've got my hobby time where I'm playing Warhammer or playing Pokemon or whatever it might be, and I've got my going out drinking with my mates time, and never the twain shall meet. Like, they'll have sets of friends for one thing, sets of friends for another thing. And like, one of the goals for this place was, if you want to bring your missus down and have a quiet drink and have her see what you do and what you like in a really positive light, we can help achieve that for you. If you want to bring your mates from work for somewhere for a nice drink. And then, you know, if they decide that they want to play a game, they can pull out a game from the board games library. Oh, look at that. Really easily and do that. Like the goal was to make, in the same way that, you know, lots of podcasts and streams and so on have made Warhammer cool, have made Dungeons and Dragons cool, have made Magic cool, comparative to maybe where they were 10, 15 years ago. We're like, we want a bar that does the exact same thing. And I think that we broadly achieved that. Obviously, with COVID, we're a little bit quiet right now, but hopefully, you know, guys, swing on by, come and visit. Let us know if you've heard about it from the podcast, because that's lovely, and I'll let Rob know, and he'll be all excited. It'll be awesome, and we'll be happy. But yeah, it's a space that we're excited about because it helps sort of merge those worlds a little bit and lets everyone be proud of the things that they love. Because like, we'll get people coming in. We're literally right opposite the West Ham stadium, the football stadium. I'm looking out the window right now and I can see it. And we get West Ham fans in, and like there'll be some of them that are like, oh wow, people spend hundreds of pounds on figures. And I'm like, how much do you spend on your season? How much do you spend on shirts each season? Like, everyone's a nerd about something. It's just a matter of what you're a nerd about. And all that being a nerd is caring about something enough that you don't care who knows about it.
It's just being passionate. It's just passion.
Yeah.
Like,
and passion is attractive.
It's life. Like
is.
What, you live your entire life not being passionate about one single fucking thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is.
It's awesome. And like, we want the people who are passionate about games to be able to enjoy that passion and share that passion and feel great about that passion,
and
rather
get drunk.
than and get drunk. Yeah, we will have. But no, like if you drink, like I know that you don't drink a whole lot, Rob. Like we've got tons of delicious food and drink that's non-alcoholic. Like there's no requirement to anyone to treat this place as where you go for a rager. But at the same time, if you did want to come along and have table service bringing you pints on the regular while you roll your dice, we will very happily do so all day long until we have to cut you off because you had too much to drink.
Yeah, that's what I want. As many decaf lattes as I can get my hands on, and then some, I don't know, some sort of like snacks. I want snacks. Like, do you know what's really upsetting for me? This is just a me thing, and it might be not very regionally relevant. But I'm a bit of a fan of Phoenix Nights, Peter Kay's Phoenix Nights, and because I grew up pretty working class, pretty poor, and so we would always go to the sort of pubs where you would have bar snacks. I'm not really sure what bar snacks were. I think that they were a way to feed your poor children as opposed to buying them food. Not really, but like I still want that sometimes. I want a Bombay mix, like next to the table when I play. Like, what's wrong with that?
We've got the full kitchen, so we can sometimes do you a little bit better than that. Like if you were partway through your game and you said, can I get a side order of Yorkshire puddings and gravy? I can bring you a plate of Yorkshire puddings and gravy while you roll your dice.
Yeah. Now you're getting it.
If you want it, it's there. Or, you know, like, we've got a full kitchen. It's got lovely vegan food. It's got lovely meaty food. It's got everything in between. Like, swing on by. No, it's once you can travel, like, only do what you're feeling safe with. You know, we don't want to be part of the problem for anyone. We don't want anyone worried or scared to be with us. So, like, if right now you're worried about COVID, just chill out, stay at home. It's fine. I've not got a mask on right now because I'm talking a lot to you guys, but equally, I've not got anyone within 50 feet of me. Like, as soon as I'm back downstairs serving, the mask's back on. Like, we want everyone to be safe.
And you said that you were finding that an okay experience at the moment.
Yeah, it's different, but it's fine. Like, and a lot of that is all credit to our customers. Everyone has been chill. No one wants to upset the apple cart. You guys rock. You're awesome. Like all that we ever ask of anyone at the moment is a little bit of understanding, because we're all having a weird time right now. And the easiest way that people can help any independent, be this a game store, a bar, a cafe they like, whatever, independents especially, because it's been rough on us. It has. Is just where you can, if you can, come back and, you know, buy things, say hello even. You know, it's been hard on, like, mentally not seeing anyone for a few months. And, like, tell your friends. Like, we don't need people to suddenly start throwing around tons of tips everywhere, though obviously we won't say no. But, like, if you can just visit where it makes sense for you, tell your friends about places, it really helps everybody. And, like, the smaller independents especially doesn't have to, like, the bigger chains, yes, they're probably hurting, but the small independents, the amount that has to go wrong for them to just fully go under, it's a lot quicker for them to just fall apart. And yeah, I want to make sure that once all of this has kind of blown out the other side, that everyone is still able to function.
Yeah, I mirror that sentiment as well. Big shout out to Third Me for subscribing, by the way. And I think that's true of anyone. Like those local gaming stores are really important. And as places like your place, and I know that there are places all over as well. I think of Exploding Dice over in Northern Ireland. And I think of these places where people are setting up places where you can play. Now they've existed traditionally as well. There have been gaming centres for a long time, but I feel like that there was always gaming centre with like a snack machine inside it. Whereas I feel like that there are maybe better versions that we could eventually get to as gamers, which I think is fun, and especially as the nature of our game is always going to be tactile. I love playing Total War. Don't get me wrong. I like playing my computer games when I get the opportunity to play my computer games. But I said that in a really weird tone there. But the nature of Warhammer is generally tactile, and it's the thing I look forward to the most. You're hanging out with someone, you're showing them your stuff. Like it just like there's a visceral feel to it. Maybe it's because I'm from an analog generation, you are, and maybe that's something that won't pass down. But I feel like there's that tactile
I think
nature.
it will.
You think so?
So from running this place, like every time I explain the whole ethos thing of like we all look at a lot of screens, let's just not look at a screen for a little bit. Like I think part of the reason that Games Workshop, I mean, there's lots of reasons that Games Workshop has had a lovely time in the last few years and that have nothing to do with this. But genuinely, part of it is that, like, if I'm painting, in that moment, I'm holding something, I'm looking at it directly, I'm not looking at a screen, and it's an incredible release. Like,
I see what you're saying.
It's the most relaxing thing.
You think it's a way to get away from all of that?
Yes, it's a really good, like, hard stop on having to have a screen open, and like while you're playing a game as well, a game of Warhammer certainly. Yeah, you might have an iPad with all your rules on. Frankly, it is probably the best way of hanging all your rules out. But in that moment, it's just like a big sigh of relief for me almost. Once I've got those figures on the table, I'm like, I've got 2 hours now. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, of just enjoying the time that I'm spending with the people I'm with. And the same's true of board games, the same's true of TCGs, the same's true of role-play games.
Do you ever do that thing? Because I get this. This is a me thing. And there's loads of people, by the way, mirroring your sentiment in the chat. Like Gorka Walker's talking about the Zen of the hobby. Randy's talking about Warhammer hobby and his
mentioned your Zen book. You mentioned Zen and you mentioned Bushido earlier on. If you've not read it, guys, read Zen and the Art of Archery. It's the original, like, pre-World War II book about Zen. It's really, really thin, really short, very cheap these days. Amazing book about just centering yourself. Love it. Sorry, carry on.
Oh no, great book. Thank you. Yeah, and then Andrew Tate says, yes, I love sitting painting. It's how I chill and wind down after the day. I agree with that as well. There's the two bits. There's the two Zen moments I have in my life. I sit, I paint. Yeah, that gets me in that space where I'm just very comfortable. And then also when I play the game, and then I remember a game I had against my very good friend Giannis, which was a tournament. But it was just that. I forgot the rest of life existed other than playing that game with him because I was so in it. And the really interesting thing I find, and I don't know if this mirrors you, if you mirror this, is when you finish a game and then you pick up your phone and then you realize the world exists. Like I don't know about me, but transport is maybe not the wrong thing, but I'm able to like zone in on just this singular thing, and then everything else goes by the wayside, and that's nice. And I think
it's a great feeling.
And I think the reason that it's fun at events is because there's a group of you who are all in it together. It's like the world exists in a microcosm of the 40 to 200 people that might be that event. It's like this is all that life is today, and it seems more manageable. I'm not sure. Maybe that's too heavy-handed.
The thing that I love about events, I love just conveniently going to my local store. I'm in it right now. It's my local store. But the thing that I love about events is that it gives you a really strong impetus to properly finish that army and get it all ready and nice in a way that sometimes, like playing with your mates, sometimes you can get away with like, all right, I haven't finished painting these guys, but it'll be fine. Like events mean I get to do that properly, and it does feel so good having a fully painted, nice looking army on the table. I get to meet new people that I wouldn't otherwise see even at the store. And you do form friendships that you then span across all sorts of events, and then you get to just see loads of cool things. And yes, there's also the bit where you get to separate. For me, because I've not played so many Warhammer events, certainly, I've not yet hit the zen point while playing in a tournament, because I'm still just like, all right, how do Blades of Corn work again? Okay, I've got this matchup. How's this going to go? For me, I'm a lot of thinking. I get my little competitive head on a little bit more in a tournament compared with playing in a club. But like, I still love them. Like, I love the energy. Like, you can feel it in the room when you get in. Of like, it's a big family reunion, but also there's that little bit of like, who's going to win? Who's broken it this time? What have we figured out? What we're going to do? That like put them all together, and it's really fun. Like, I've definitely missed there not being events this year. Like, I was meant to be going on a combination stag do / play an event weekend. That's the reason I've been working on Slaves to Darkness Army, so I can have fun with that. And it's just like, well, that's not happened now, and I don't know when I next will be able to play an event, which is sad. But yeah, when you can do them, they're so good, so good.
They are great. All right, before we head off to the day. Oh, by the way, Third Me says on top. I totally agree. Time flies insanely when playing. You get in the groove, get a few games in. So everyone's with you on that. It's all about that Zen hobby. Before we head off, though, 'cause it's been amazing talking to you. Thank you so much. Is there anything
I hadn't realised. I don't know what time it is. I hadn't realised that we were getting towards the end. I'm sorry. I've been talking too much.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. Do you? No, you haven't at all. I've loved listening to you. Absolutely. What have you? Have you got anything that you think that we haven't touched on that you think you'd like to bring up?
I mean, I don't think so. Like, in reality, we could talk all day long about all sorts of things. If you give me a topic, we'll cover an hour. And like, hopefully, in some point in the future, I'll get to come back and we can do exactly that. But no, I don't have anything specific at the moment. Like, support your local game stores, be nice to everyone, be excellent to one another, all of that.
All very good points as well. I can't wait to come and see you down there one day as well.
Yeah,
soon.
do it.
And see you. It's been fantastic talking to you. And also, if you've been interested in what Tim's got to say about commentary or what I've got to say, you can always reach out to me or Tim to talk to us about it. There's still loads for us to especially learn in the Warhammer commentary field. It's brand new.
Love getting feedback always.
Yeah.
And yeah, there'll be lots of people that watch way more Warhammer commentary or Magic commentary than either of us because we're doing it. So like sometimes the viewer standpoint, like there'll be stuff that we just don't see because we're busy in the weeds actually putting content out there. And like every now and again, you'll see coverage of whatever it is completely levels up because you suddenly realize like, oh, obviously we should have been doing this as Red Zone coverage. So like if, for example, you were doing T-Sports Network stuff for 40K, where you've got 4-man matches, I would totally want to stagger them so they start half an hour after each other if you've got time to do so that you can catch that important turn one of all of the 40K matches. So you can jump about more easily. And like there's stuff like that until someone says it, you're just like, yeah, like you can't think of everything. So yeah, feedback is huge.
Yeah, there's loads of feedback, so please do get in touch with us about that. That would be really fun. The venue for the podcasters, by the way, obviously, Tim, let everyone know.
Yeah, so this is, like, where I'm at is Rule Zero, which is in East London. Rulezero.co.uk is where all of our deets are. But yeah, East London, near Hackney Wick. Pretty easy to get to on the train if you need to, but obviously at the moment, don't travel more than you feel comfortable with. And if you want to hit me up for anything, I'm at Tim's Wheelbarrow on Twitter. I'm happy to chat, assuming that I'm not busy pouring pints for people.
Good. And thank you, everyone, Twitch chat, for joining me today. You guys are great. Thanks for looking after me over the weekend when I was feeling a bit under the weather, but now I'm fighting fit again, ready to go. And I'm very much looking forward to the GHB 2020 show tonight. There's some good things, there's some bad things. Top level, good things and bad things. But it's going to be an exciting chat. I've got some great guests on. Got James, Nathan, and Owen Jackson is going to be in. So loads of cool stuff. And you can join me again tomorrow to see if Val is going to be on the 40K Adjacent show or if he's going to be with his wife while she's giving birth. Those are the two things that could be happening tomorrow. But you guys are great. Tim, thanks so much for being on the show. I'll include all the information in the show notes below. Everyone have a great day. Podcasters, you obviously stay hydrated. Patreon couldn't do it without you. You guys are blessed. And yeah, big loves. Fuck you, buddies. Have a great day.